Welcome to the Better Dad Show, episode 13. I'm your host, Bill Hutchison. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and DLive, live streaming every week for this podcast. If you head over to betterdadshow.com, you can actually find links to everywhere. So you can find us. You can also follow along with us in the book. Right now, we are reading the book Better Dads, Stronger Sons. This one here by Rick Johnson. We are actually at the end of the book, which will also be the end of season 1 of the podcast. So moving on from season 1, I'll probably take a week off just to sort of recalibrate and see where we go, see what kind of feedback we get from the first season of the podcast, and where we go from there. Last week, we talked about finding mentors. So I'm hoping that you might have had a look at that and think about that and what it means for finding mentors for your own sons. And also, does God want to use you as a mentor in someone else's life? So, something to think of. The reason I'm doing this podcast is because I want to become a better dad, better husband, and a better person in the community. So I'm hoping that's why you're joining us and why you are here as well, as we look at how we can become better husbands, better dads, and better men. So this week is one that I'm really looking forward to reading, which is called Leaving a Legacy. Now, something that's been pretty heavy on my heart for the last couple of years even, and I've talked about it with my wife as well, is leaving a legacy and sort of leaving, what kind of inheritance are we leaving for our kids? One verse that's been specifically sitting really heavy on my heart, not in a bad way, but in a good way, in a challenging way, that God is speaking to me through, is 1 Timothy 5, verse 8, which says, "Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So, how do we live that out? What do we do? What does it mean to leave a legacy? So, I have some ideas. My wife and I have been talking through ideas about what that means and how we can leave a legacy for our kids and our kids' kids, like our grandkids and our great-grandkids. Some days, honestly, I look around and I think this is really, really hard. And all I can think of then is, well, what can I do to make it better for my kids so that, they will be in a better place than maybe they are now. It's been a real challenge for me just in thinking that through, and how can we establish that for our own kids? How do we put them in a place? It's kind of that, the saying, you want to plant trees now that you will never experience the shade of, but your kids will and their kids will. So that's sort of the thing I think of when I think legacy, when I think of inheritance. So I'm curious to see what Rick Johnson says about it as we continue to read chapter 12 of Better Dads and Stronger Sons by Rick Johnson. So chapter 12, Leaving a Legacy. Plans are nothing. Planning is everything. Dwight D. Eisenhower. The legacy you leave on this earth depends upon the planning you put into it. Boys who have never had healthy masculinity modeled for them face an extremely difficult, if not impossible task, becoming a good man. Since healthy masculinity is rarely modeled in the movies, on television, or in our cultural heroes, without the presence and guidance of a real man in his life, a boy will never understand how to think, act, and behave like a man. Your legacy and your son's legacy depend upon your active involvement in his life. That kind of responsibility requires planning and intentional performance so that we are not just flying by the seat of our pants. No dying man ever wishes he'd spent more time at the office. If we're fortunate, we discover long before we're on our deathbeds the importance of our family and of passing on a legacy for the coming generations. Our culture tends to think of a legacy in terms of monetary worth, but a true legacy is based on whether we stood for something, whether we made a difference in someone's life, and whether our lives will be remembered because of the quality of life we lived. When I was a young man, I worked in a fruit cannery. One of the operations was to mash the lower grade apples and pears into mush, cook them, separate their juices, and finally distill the liquid, capturing the essence of the fruit. The essence is the taste and smell of the fruit, its soul, if you will. This essence was then applied in varying concentrations to a variety of products to enhance them or to make them more appealing and palatable. John Eldredge says, masculinity is an essence passed on from father to son. This masculine essence, applied in varying concentrations, can make boys into healthy, noble men of all types, shapes, and sizes. Without it, they grow up to look like men, but don't have the essence or soul of a true man. Boys need men to teach them how the world works and to make them noble. Joseph McPherson, recently retired headmaster of the Heights School, an all-male private school in Potomac, Maryland, believes that men are essential in teaching boys about the world. Christina Hoff Sommers, in her book The War Against Boys, characterizes McPherson's philosophy this way. For McPherson, the goal of educating children, specifically boys, is not only to impart information and teach skills, but to provide them with a noble vision of life, to convey to them that they have to do something great with their lives. He believes that adult males are uniquely suited to impart the philosophy to boys. McPherson explains that male teachers can introduce boys to the world of ideas, of nature, art, poetry, and music, and generally expand the range of interests without the boys feeling they are risking their masculinity. Without you actively involved in your son's life, who will teach him these ideologies? Who will help him to become the man God has planned for him to be? Who will provide him with a noble vision of life and convey to him that he has to do something great with his life? These are the kind of questions that, if approached with intent and forethought, can create a legacy of masculine leadership that impacts generations of people. Action plan. I've observed over a long period of time that goals and accomplishments don't just happen. They require planning. An old saying goes, you don't plan to fail, you just fail to plan. Consider which values and character traits you want your son to demonstrate. Then design a program to help intentionally teach him with those values. Think ahead of time about different situations your son is likely to find himself in. These circumstances will provide opportunities to teach him about specific character traits. When you find yourself or your son in these situations, you're then prepared to turn them into life learning lessons instead of just watching the opportunities float by. These lessons could involve hypothetical situations or ones of a more practical nature. For instance, as my son continues to work more hours, we are gradually increasing the amount of money he has to contribute to our household. He now pays a small amount of rent, half his car payment, half his auto insurance coverage, and some grocery money, although certainly not as much as he consumes each month, as well as buying his own gasoline for his car. This teaches him how to budget his income to pay for the expenses he will encounter when he moves out on his own. Next, write your plan down on paper as an outline. A goal that is not written down tends to never come to fruition. This will help you to father intentionally instead of reactively. Have a plan, but don't fall in love with it. Be flexible enough to change it when necessary. Your plan will need to be revisited and adjusted periodically, perhaps once a year or more. Remember that as your son grows, your responses and the way you deal with him will need to change. What works when he is 7 years old will likely not work when he is 17. Keep learning. Keep learning for your own benefit as an example to your son. Many men quit learning after they leave school. When they quit learning, they quit growing. Teach your son that education is a lifelong process, and those who continue to gain wisdom benefit the most. Read many books, both fiction and nonfiction. Attend seminars on a wide variety of subjects. Go back to school. The more you invest in and develop yourself, the more you can give to your son. I feel like the older I get, the less I know. But the only thing I know for sure is that if you wait until you're 45 years old to start snowboarding, you'd better have a hot tub nearby. I also know that I am where I am today because I have continued to learn and grow and not stagnate in my personal development. One of the best ways to continue to learn and gain wisdom is by remaining teachable. Men who lose their willingness to learn are destined to crash into the brick wall of life. Our old friend Samson is a good example of a man who is not teachable. John Maxwell wrote, Samson was so self-centered, so undisciplined, so arrogant that he lost his teachability. And that loss can make even the most talented person ineffective as a leader. Every time he faced a problem, he reacted with violence rather than deal with his character flaws. As fathers, our role as leaders and teachers are greatly compromised when we lose our teachability and stop learning. Develop a vision for your son. So much of what we read in this book talks about how important it is to be very deliberate with our parenting, to not just go with the flow, but to actually have a plan and It's something I haven't done enough of, but just to really, what is it that you want to achieve in your son? What are the character traits that you want to grow in him? I like here where it says to have a plan and actually to write it down. That's something I haven't done. Something my wife and I have talked about the different character traits and the things that we want to see in our kids. But I don't think we've really nutted out a plan to see that happen, to see them grow in those areas so that in the end they can actually be, so we can achieve the goals in their lives that we desire. So it's probably something I need to think more about. I mean, I'm still lucky enough to have my kids all living under our roof. So even though they do range from age to 13 to 21, they're still here. So can still make a difference even when they're older. All right, develop a vision for your son. We'll start this one again. Vision is what makes a man. As the visionary for your families, the ability to see the big picture is the most important attribute we possess. Yet many men squander or misplace their vision, then wonder why they lose their families. God gave you the ability to look out over the horizon and into the future. Use that gift to keep your family safe from the schemes of the enemy. Develop a vision for your son. Always hold him to that higher standard. Yes, the narrow path is harder to walk down, and most people take the easy path through life, but easy is not always best. Your son needs to have a vision of what a man should be, hopefully modeled by you. He needs high standards to strive towards and goals and dreams to motivate him. Make sure you share your vision with him so he knows what to expect. People have a pretty hard time living up to our expectations if we never tell them what those expectations are. It's about communication, isn't it? Something my wife is so much better at than I am. But something that we can all grow in, right? As your son comes of age, take an opportunity to sit down with him and come to a joint meeting of the minds. Have a meeting where a father and son can compare notes on what it means to be a man. This provides a good time to explain some of the changes in your relationship when your role begins to change from authoritarian to advisor. It also gives you a chance to make sure he knows the answers to some very serious questions. For instance, have you specifically talked to your son about what it means to be a man? How about what traits a man exhibits? Have you ever told your boy that when he grows up, his primary role in life will be to provide for and protect his family? Too many young men today grow up thinking that to be successful means to wear the right clothes, drive the right kind of car, and have the coolest friends. Stu Weber likens men today to rusty knights in a hostile land. He says, I'm reminded of many of my brothers today, modern man, emasculated man, just a shadow of God's intention for masculinity. Something has happened to manhood. Something has attacked its heart so that manhood is somehow less masculine. What has attacked and diminished manhood is the lack of a vision for masculinity. Over the past several generations, an increasingly larger percentage of sons have been raised by fathers who either did not know what it means to be a man or didn't care enough to provide a positive model of it. Your vision for your son must clearly define what a man is and what a father does, or he is at risk of becoming one of Weber's rusty knights. Not only that, but as a man, you are the only one who can impart a vision of virtue and nobility among boys. Headmaster Damon Bradley of Landon, another distinguished boys' school, wrote the following regarding the ancient view that manliness and virtue are ultimately related. Our Latin teacher has explained to me that the Latin word for man, vir, can easily be recognized in the word virtue as its root derivation, suggesting that virtue and manliness were integrally linked in the Roman mind. In the classical world, and arguably in boys' schools, manliness is defined more by virtue and less by might. Our world is looking for leaders of virtue, men with vision. Proverbs 29:18 says, without a vision, the people perish. Author's paraphrase. For men who are responsible for others' lives, lack of vision is destructive, leading to whole families not reaching their full potential. Long-term vision is what separates successful men and fathers from ineffective ones. Part of a man's job is to see the bigger picture. He has to know what's ahead in order to give the appropriate warnings. That way, when life gets tough, we men don't have a tendency to react instead of responding purposefully. If we can't see the whole lay of the land, we cannot guide our sons in the direction they need to go, especially when they get lost. Prayer. The most important action you can take on your son's behalf is to pray for him on a daily basis. Prayer is the most powerful tool in the universe. God is the ultimate Father in the universe. Reading His Word faithfully, praying to Him, and reaching out to other godly men will help you develop into the kind of father God would have you become. Everything you need to know to be a good husband, father, and man is contained in the Bible. Sacrificially offer your son to God like Abraham did his son Isaac. No, I don't mean you should pray for his death, but pray for his being dedicated to the Lord. Ask the Father how you can raise your son to honor God and fulfill the destiny God has in store for him. Recognize that your son is God's child and that you have been granted caretaker and mentor status. Pray for wisdom daily. Proverbs 3:13 says, "Blessed is the man who pray for wisdom daily." Proverbs 3:13 says, "Blessed is the man who finds wisdom." I cannot tell you how many times I prayed to God for wisdom, but I know I have done it often. I prayed for my children every day since I became a Christian. The purpose of praying to and worshiping God is not only to determine your destiny, it is also to save your family. God has called man to deliver those closest to them. General Douglas MacArthur said, "By profession, I'm a soldier, and I take pride in the fact, but I am prouder to be a father. A soldier destroys in order to build. The father builds, never destroys. The one has the potentialities of death, the other embraces creation and life. And while the hordes of death are mighty, the battles of life are mightier still. My hope is that my son, when I am gone, will remember me not from battle, but in the home, repeating with him the simple prayer, Our Father, which art in heaven." Pray daily for your wife as part of praying for your son. Your wife is an incredibly effective partner and resource in helping raise your children. Your coming together as a team in this area not only effectively petitions the Lord and intercedes on your son's behalf, but also sets a good example for your son and improves your relationship with your wife. Remember to pray for your wife too. Pray for her to be an effective partner in your partnering team and for her healthy relationship with your son. Pray for your son's future, for the life he will lead, the people he will touch, and the children he will raise. And then continue to pray for him throughout his lifetime. The impact of a praying father cannot be overstated. James 5:16 says, "The prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. Use that power to help create a legacy for you and your son." Closing thoughts. In closing this book, let me summarize my counsel about raising your son to nobility with one sentence. Remember to tell your boy you love him and are proud of him, to pray for him, to spend time with him, and to love his mother. That's my best advice. I think it's fitting that a book devoted to fathers raising sons should end with the following poem by Gordon MacDonald that says the things all sons long to tell their fathers. Take its wisdom to heart and remember that your son has the same fears and desires you had as a boy. When men think private thoughts. Oh, my father, why didn't you open your real heart when I was looking? Why did you only show me strength? When I needed to know it was okay to be weak? Why did you never tell me that you sometimes cried late at night? That you craved the intimacy of friendships? That you were afraid? That you were sometimes raged with lust? That you occasionally doubted God? That you were worried about failing? That you didn't know all the answers? And that there were times when you wanted to break out of the trap of obligation and find the wild life? Oh, my father, why didn't you open your real heart when I was looking? Why did you only show me perfection? When I needed to know that it might be okay to be average? Why did you never tell me that you made a few stupid mistakes? That you sometimes failed as a husband and would like to have choked your wife? That you often misjudged me as your son and probably feared that I would amount to nothing? That you may have betrayed a friend or two? That you voted for the wrong president? That you really would have liked to have had more money? That you had dreams you never realized? Oh, my father, why didn't you open your real heart when I was looking? Why did you only speak to me of facts and opinions? When I needed to know that it was okay to feel? Why, my father, did you never tell me that you were sometimes so crushed that you wanted to run away? That you knew terrible disappointment when people let you down? That you may even have gotten mad at God once or twice? that you grieved because you didn't know your father either, that you tasted the anguish of loneliness and wished for a friend or two, and that you may even have doubted your own manhood now and then. Why didn't you open your real heart when I was looking, oh my beloved Dad? Why did you only show me a caricature of a man that probably doesn't exist? Not in you anyway, and not in me. I needed some open heart, to know that it was okay to stumble, to sometimes retrace my steps, to fail, and to cry. Why, my Father, did you never tell me that being a man is plain, pure, hard work? Gordon MacDonald. That about says it all, doesn't it? Make sure that your son doesn't carry the sentiment of this poem in his heart the rest of his life. Be a real father to him. Give him every reason to write a poem that says, oh, my Father, thank you for opening your real heart while I was looking. Do the hard work now, and you and your son will reap the reward for life and forever. Good luck, good fathering, and God bless you. Well, that is the end. And that was quite the poem at the end for a boy to his father. So, I don't feel I have anything to add to that. Legacy is a challenging thing. Looking to the future, it's not just, again, what we do now, but it's, what's it going to look like in 20 years, 50 years when we're not even here? What's going to be in our sons that we have instilled in there? How can we do that better? How can we leave a legacy that teaches masculinity? It's a challenge for all of us. I think looking back at the book itself, some of the key points that I'm feeling is to get a group of men around you. 10 and 10, again. I've said that a few times. That's from Owen Benjamin. But find 10 men in 10 minutes, 10 miles, 10 kilometers, however you want to say it. But get a group of men that you can rely on. These are some of the men that might be mentors for your kids. Might be mentors in certain areas, whether it's in business or relationships or just in different areas, aspects of your life that maybe me or you as a father don't excel in, but that men that do excel in that. Can you get men like that around you? Or do you have men in your life that you can pray with? I don't. I need it. And it is, again, one of those things that I've been really challenged with in reading this book again. And then just, in looking again at legacy, what are we doing to take care of our household, our kids, our wife? Are we leaving a legacy for them? So we'll leave it at that this week. This is a Value for Value podcast. If you get any value out of it, I'd love it if you would share it. You got your talent, treasure, and time. So thank you for taking a half hour or so to listen or watch. If you head over to betterdadshow.com, you can watch this episode. You just watch my face. So yeah, not too exciting. So you might want to I do have a face for audio, which is why I'd recommend that you actually subscribe on a podcast platform. Myself, I use Podcast Addict, but you can use iTunes, Spotify. It's in all your podcast players. So just look for Better Dad Show and you should be able to find it. So thank you for listening. If you found this to be encouraging, please share it with others. Let's get a real community around us so we can pray together, work together, and try to become better dads, better husbands, and better men. Thank you.